Welcome to Freaky Fast Broadcasting Podcast. Today, it's the Cool Down Lap, episode 2, as we've got some great conversations with the ISRC Truck Series, as well as the Wicked Racing League, Stars and Stripes, and WSSR. A little bit of a disclaimer, we were not able to get the conversation of that of Trevor Earhart as well as Travis Dart for the Full Send Racing Series. They will have their own separate video and audio podcast later on. But for today, we do have 4 of the 5 leagues that we cover week in and week out. So let's start the conversation. It's with Monday night. Christopher Norris got to have a chat with his friend of Cody Reed as they got to talk about how season 4 has had its ups and downs.
Hello, my name is Christopher Norris, and today I'll be covering the ISRC Truck Series. Joining me today will be Cody Reed. My first question is, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing good. And to start off on first main questions, what got you into racing and iRacing?
Probably like crash compilations on YouTube. Like back in like mid 2010s, and not even just crash compilations, just people playing iRacing, just videos of that. Then like during COVID, obviously, you had the Pro Invitational on TV. That's a pretty normal answer, I feel like, for a lot of people.
For the crash compilations, were they just iRacing or they NASCAR or other racing series?
iRacing, just like specifically iRacing. Because I was into NASCAR like for a while before that. So
And what was your favorite counteract that you saw in these crash compilations?
I guess just like blowovers and stuff, the big pileups.
I mean, that's a fair answer. Now, when it comes to iRacing Coach Series or was the Peak NF3 Series, what was your kind of favorite driver? I mean, there's been a lot of changes, but there's already still a lot of veterans that are still in the series to this day. What is your favorite driver now, and what was your favorite driver then?
I'm gonna be honest. I never really watched a lot of the pro guys, but like right now, Casey Kerwin's pretty cool. I mean, again, that's probably a pretty normal answer. But yeah, I never really watched back then. I know like Josh Berry did some stuff, so I guess Josh Berry he's pretty cool.
I mean,
So
hey, that guy's going into the Cup Series for a few weeks here, starting last week. But moving on, how did you find league racing? What you got you into it?
well, Martin Morales, one of the admins of the ISRC Truck Series, I had been following him on Instagram for a while before the Truck Series started, and he posted advertising it before season 1 had started, just like recruiting people, and I said, hey, okay, I'll do my first league, and that's pretty much it.
And you have actually the 4th most starts in the ISC Truck Series. How has it been watching the league grow from day 1 and until now?
Kind of up and down, we've had a lot of guys come in and leave over the 4 seasons. But I think overall the skill of the drivers that have stuck around, I'd say especially guys like you and me, we've gotten a lot better over the 4 seasons. We started out, running maybe top 20 at best, and then wrecking out most weeks, and now we're competing for wins and everything. Level of like talent has just increased over time, I think.
Yeah, and let's talk about yourself in the last couple seasons, and especially the last couple weeks with this last season coming up. You progressively getting better with each season moving on, and you've noticed some growth. How has it, how much growth have you noticed throughout the last couple seasons?
Well, before this season, obviously, season 2 was probably my best season overall. Now, statistics wise, season 3 was, but I never really had any like, crazy things happen in season 3. I had a ton of second place finishes in season 2, um, and but season 1 I was pretty bad, and then season 2 I was slightly less bad, but like I had a lot of luck. And season 3 was probably my. I don't even want to talk about season 3 because I caused a lot of wrecks,
That
and I
wall.
wrecked myself out a lot. Yeah, the wall became a Cody Reed in the wall became a meme in season 3. But at the very end of season 3 at Phoenix, I don't know what happened, but like starting at Phoenix, something just like ticked, and I've just been doing a lot better since then. I've been like able to like hang with the really fast guys. And it's just I kind of really haven't had any like bad weeks outside of like races that I get in a wreck that someone else causes, or I need to go throw up and leave the race at Auto Club. I mean, right now I'm tied for the most top 10s, I think. I have one of the better average finishes out of everyone, and it definitely would be a lot better if it wasn't for that Auto Club DNF. But I definitely think I've gotten a lot better, especially in season 4 so far.
Now, with the fourth season it's been a very interesting start. You have Logan Berkey capturing his first win of the season after being here for about 3 seasons total, and then Noah also being here for like 1 or 2 seasons so far, winning at Auto Club, and then eventually you capture your first win, making it, I believe, 2 in a row at road courses that same week at Watkins Glen. How does it feel to finally get that win after so many ups and downs, especially finishing second place the last time at Auto Club?
It was pretty big. Like I had won in the Wicked Racing League the same week before winning in the ISRC trucks, and not to discount that league because like I really like the guys in that league. But I've been in this league since season 1, and I've had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of you know streaks of pretty good finishes, and then streaks of really bad finishes, and I've gotten into some arguments with people, some scuffles on the track. But like I feel most connected to this league. So getting that win at Watkins Glen was pretty awesome, especially because the week prior to that I had a really good race at Chicagoland until I ended up getting wrecked out late in the race, and I definitely think I had one of the trucks to beat in that race. But yeah, that one was pretty big. I was really excited about that.
But moving on to one of our last questions, you're ninth in points at the moment. There's 3 races left. That would be Fuji, Kansas, and Bristol. Now, road courses, they've shown to be your thing sometimes. Intermediates, if it's the right track, yes. Short tracks, I haven't paid much attention to that. What is your opinions going forward for the next 3 weeks before the playoffs?
So obviously, how I feel about road courses. Well, it actually kind of varies because Watkins Glen and Sonoma are like my bread and butter, especially Watkins Glen. But Fuji, I've literally never even seen Fuji. I have no clue what it looks like. I have no clue what it drives like. It might end up being like Road America for me, which wasn't a very good race. I was pretty fast in practice there, but when it came like race time, I just kind of fell off, and it ended up like hurting my chances at moving on to the next round of the playoffs last season. So hopefully it doesn't end up like that. Obviously I'm locked into the playoffs, so that doesn't really matter. But I do want to maybe potentially try to snag a win in these next 3 races. You said Kansas was the next one, and that's kind of similar to like Chicagoland, I'm pretty sure, and tracks like that. And obviously I was really good at Chicagoland until I wrecked. So that one might be pretty okay too. And then Bristol is the last one, right? Was
Correct.
that right? Okay. Me and my teammates have always shown pretty good speed at Bristol, as long as I'm not like abusing my tires, and I've gotten a lot better with that, especially this season. So I'm kind of looking forward to that one, maybe like a top 5 run there.
And moving on to the actual playoffs, first off, we have the first round of 16, which would be Daytona Road Course and Homestead, Miami, and then the second round be North Wilkesboro and Nashville Speedway, and then the third round before the final would be Dover and Atlanta before we head to Charlotte for the championship race. So that's in definitely a bunch of different tracks that you do need to skill out. Now we do have, let's say, about 3 or 4 of those being intermediates: Homestead, Nashville, Dover. Well, Dover's more of a short track, Atlanta, and then Charlotte. But with a road course at the very beginning, what's your thoughts on how far you'll be able to move it through the playoffs?
Well, I'm extremely confident with round 1. We haven't run Daytona Road Course since season 1, and it is one of my better road courses, and it's probably my second favorite road course on iRacing. Um, During that season 1 race, I did not get to qualify because I messed up on both of my qualifying laps, and I had to start from the back. I got some damage like really early on, and then I had to drive up through the pack with damage, and I ended up finishing like 6th, which was my best finishing position that whole season. And that was a pretty good race for me. And I think that had I actually started like in the top 5 or anything, I don't know if I would have had anything for Sora and Whitley in that race, but I think a top 3 would have had a pretty good possibility. I've gotten a lot better at road courses since then, so I think I'll definitely have a shot to win. What was the round of 12 tracks?
So that would have been North Wilkesboro and Nashville.
That's the one I'm kind of most worried about. North Wilkesboro, I think I did pretty okay there. Actually, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I spun there last
Yeah.
season. Yeah, that's where one of the COD monster gifts happened. But besides spinning, I was actually pretty good in that race. But the playoff points are definitely going to help from my win. So hopefully that can propel me past that round because I've never gotten past that round. I've never gotten to the round of 8, and I'm hoping to make it this season. I think it's a very real possibility. I don't think I'll have anything for the final 4, but I mean, if things happen right, and I can compete with like the top guys, maybe the round of 4 is possible. But I'm aiming for a round of 8 this time, and maybe a round of 4.
Also, real quick, one thing that I will say is that one you forget about your blue thin. Also, moving on. So we have about 3 races left in our
It's
playoffs.
Dwayne the Rock
Team play,
Johnson.
team playoffs to be exact. With the dirt race, they became a little bit more distant. Now we still have 3 races left, of course, with a bunch of drivers. So we have Armadillo, which would be used to be Color Deal, then Lost in Line, Blackjack, and then the team Almond Snowy Desert Racing, all within a close bunch for the playoff points, doing 269, 261, 254, and 251. What are your thoughts on potentially winning the team championship to basically mock, that your team dominated the regular season?
I think we would have a good shot at having the lead right now if it wasn't for having to use our provisionals and basically getting last place in a lot of races. Because I had finished last, or yeah, almost last at Auto Club. I know McAdams used his provisional. I know Forbes has used his provisional this last race, and those are pretty much equal to last place finishes. And that kind of has hurt us a little bit. Um, but overall, I feel like that McAdams had a lot of bad luck. He's been able to put some good qualifying efforts together. And he's easily a top 15 guy and easily top 10 guy if he, doesn't get caught up in stuff. And then obviously, Forbes has 2 wins, I think, right? And then Ethan doesn't have a win yet, but I'm sure he'll get one. And we're always competing up there for wins and everything. So I think we have a shot at the team championship. We haven't won it before. I feel like we probably should have in last season's. Just some bad luck went our way. But hopefully we can finish the season out on top.
Yeah, and speaking about teams, with the playoffs just about to begin, have you thought about what you're doing this season? Of course, Blackjack will most likely be around, but is there a chance you end up moving to a different team, looking for a different pickup? Possibly with the other teams watching this, that you want them to possibly make a move to another team? Or has that not been a thought yet?
I don't know. I mean, the Blackjack, we've I don't even know how to say this. Some of the drivers have, expressed some losses of interest in this league. So really the only way I'm going to leave this team is if other people start leaving and, I'm stuck on a team with just myself and one other person or even just myself. And I think I don't know how likely that is, but if that were to happen, I would definitely think about moving to a different team. And there are a few teams with some open spots open, and I'm sure some teams that will have more open spots after this season. So I don't think it would be a problem getting to a different team, obviously because I'm the GOAT and everyone's gonna want me on their team. So I'm sure Snowy Desert is just like begging for the COD monster to come on their team. So I mean, if the stars align, I guess. But I don't know. As of right now, I'm planning to stay with Blackjack. So
I mean, I will say, since you last time dropped a request, that request isn't always open. That was a one-time deal, and you threw that out the window, like the one right behind
okay,
you. Now, I'm seeing you
okay.
drinking a Diet Mountain Dew. What's your opinion on
Yep.
that?
Um, it's not one of my favorite drinks. I will say that out of all diet sodas, it's probably my favorite. And this might be a little controversial. I hope you know no like crazy Mountain Dew fanatics are listening to this. I think Diet is better than the regular Mountain Dew. Now don't boo me or anything. Um, but I don't know. It's just a flavor profile. I've been drinking this my whole life. I've been a Dale Jr. fan with his Diet Mountain Dew schemes he ran like in the COT era. The early Gen 6. Um, I mean, Diamond Dew. It's one of the better drinks. I'll always be like a root beer fan first, then like Dr Pepper, probably Coke, then Diet Mountain Dew. This is just what I have with me right now, so this is why I'm drinking it. But if I had a root beer right now, I would be drinking that instead.
Now, before we end things off, I would like to mention one thing that actually did happen 2 years ago, which it was Martinsville Week. And you may remember
Okay.
this. We were racing in a official NIS, and I beat you then.
Yeah. Okay. Um,
And
I You've mentioned this so many times, and I don't remember it, dude. I do not even remember ever running an NIS Martinsville race.
now the stat books they don't lie.
I mean, I don't even remember running NIS back then, dude. I think someone maybe also named Cody Reed must have been in that race or something because also you just can't beat me, man. There's no way that Christopher Norris beat me. No,
I
that
mean,
didn't
I don't know,
happen.
man. The
I
stat
I, I,
books don't
ref- I
lie.
refuse it. I refuse it. I think the stat books are lying. Anyone could change it. Sim Racer Hub is like or wait, it's not even Sim Racer Hub. It's on like the iRacing thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm whatever. I don't care.
I mean, I have my excuses, but I would do appreciate if you coming out tonight. Hopefully the fans, your fans, if you have many out there, enjoyed this,
Yeah.
and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
All right. Yeah. You too. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Cody.
Those two, always a hoot when you find them together. But let's head over to Wednesday night. As for myself, a first time conversation with Adam Buzzeo, get our thoughts of me racing, him racing, and as well how the season's been going for season 2 of Wicked Racing League. Well, welcome everybody. My name's Sam Dyer. Joining me is Adam Buzzeo as we're going to be talking about the Wicked Racing League. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's a little nice afternoon for me in the West Coast, so it's nice over here. But man, I gotta say, this is an interview I'm excited for. Part of this podcast, Wicked Racing League. I mean, I got to be a little glimpse on my end, got to be a driver, and then moving up to the booth. But Adam, talk about the Wicked Racing League. Where did it come from, and what got you into wanting to start up this league?
Yeah, so it was Wicked was born from me not being happy with what was out there available, at least what I had found available out there with other leagues. It wasn't that other leagues weren't good or anything like that. Myself and a few of the other guys that were in the previous league with me, I was a manager there, and I wanted to make some changes and go in a little bit of a different direction than what the league owners wanted to do. And we were having a lot of issues with, just the racing product, internal issues, just normal things that happen. And I saw ways to fix all that, but I couldn't seem to ever get any traction. So a few of the guys actually approached me about it and said, "Hey, man, like, why don't you just do your own thing and we'll help?" And I had always wanted to do something like that, but obviously it's really difficult to do that alone. But Having just a little bit of backup made it a lot easier as far as getting things set up, and everyone has different contacts within the space, for recruiting and things like that. So it was really born out of just wanting to get the best possible thing we could get going as far as a league goes, without being a professional setting and things like that, obviously.
Yeah, I know for us here at Freaky Fast, it was like, okay, we're joining up with a brand new league that just started up. How is this gonna work? What is the numbers gonna look like on our side? But man, I gotta say, it was awesome watching season one and the way that you guys grew, and then I had a free night, allowed me to race. I mean, looking back on season one, that season you were pretty consistent at finishing up front. That's something we always talk about. Also, me and Zach, when we were covering these races, is your consistency at being there at the end. What was something that was there something that you learned throughout your racing career, or you just naturally find yourself up front in these races?
No, it definitely hasn't always been like that. I struggled a lot. I have a lot of real world racing experience, mostly road courses, but not like semi-pro or anything like that in oval racing. But I actually think that hurt me a little bit in iRacing because it's so different. I mean, there's definitely things that are similar, obviously, but as far as not having that control and those feelings that you're used to, the biggest thing that's helped me be consistent is just to try to stay out of trouble. And I have a really strict rule with myself. I try to race everybody as clean as possible, whether it's a guy I've had issues with in the past or if he got into me. I find that it just works better for you in the end. Obviously, you're going to have issues with accidents. Everyone makes mistakes. But just trying to stay out of trouble and practice. I put a lot of practice in even now, even though I can drive a lot of these tracks, with my eyes closed. But the cars change a lot, especially with the next gen cars. They're constantly doing updates to those. And I think the next gen car suits my driving style a little bit better too. I didn't have as good as results in the Gen 6 car. But the Gen 6 car was just so glued to the track all the time. You know what I mean? It felt like it was, I can't remember a lot of times where that car felt loose, as opposed to the next gen car, which is probably looser than you want it to be a lot of the times. And I kind of prefer that. So I think it's just a mixture of experience. Obviously I've only been on iRacing for about 3 years, but still that's the experience. And then also racing with the same guys every week helps too. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it certainly does. You talked about having some real life racing experience. What got you into racing originally?
Originally, I mean, you'd have to go back to when I was a kid. My dad's a huge motorhead, gearhead. He's been building his own motorcycles and working on his cars since I was a kid, and he was a race fan. He was an avid dirt fan. I'm from Northeast Ohio. We're really fortunate to have a couple good racetracks in my area, but one of those is called Sharon Speedway. It's a little quarter-mile dirt track. The Blaney's, Dale Blaney, and most people are probably more familiar with Ryan now. That's their home track. I actually met Ryan Blaney when he was like 6 years old because I knew Dale Blaney from just being at that racetrack so much. So that's kind of where I got my roots in racing from, was my dad. And then obviously I found NASCAR when I was about 10 or 11. So as far as a fan standpoint, it started at a very early age. And then once I got out of the military, I didn't go right into like a normal job. I had some money saved up, so I did some odd jobs. But that's when I actually got into racing in real life. I did something called Chump Car at the time, which was a $500 or less racing series, excluding safety equipment. Obviously, like your suspension, your fire suppression system, not suspension, but your roll cage, fire suppression system, that stuff doesn't go into the budget. That has since been bought out by what a lot of people are probably familiar with now as Champ Car. It's the same rules, but they're a national / regional racing series that race at all kind of different tracks across the country. So I started doing that in around 2013, and I did it off and on through the middle 2000 teens. And I was supposed to do it again this season. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. We had some issues on not me, but the team had some issues on the back end, so we weren't able to move forward with that this season. But that's kind of where my real life experience comes from.
Well, then to real life, to iRacing. At what point did you find iRacing? When did you start into that?
I found iRacing about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I think it was at this point. It was it wasn't peak COVID. I got lucky in that regards because I wasn't trying to buy stuff during peak COVID. Um, I had heard about iRacing just through when you're on the Facebook pages for NASCAR and racing in general, you see those things, but I just never really gave it much of a thought. I went and found a Thrustmaster T150 and the crappy little plastic pedals on Facebook Marketplace for like $100. I bought that. And the first thing I did was Gran Turismo Sport on my PlayStation. And the first time I used the wheel, I was like, oh, even that wheel, going from a controller, I was like, oh, there's something to this, you know what I mean? But my biggest frustration with that is just it's not very realistic. I'm sure you know how people drive on Gran Turismo. It can be tough. Um, and it's all road courses for the most part. And I really wanted to find something that was focused on ovals, and NASCAR. And then, so, I mean, iRacing is really the only game in town as far as that goes. So I got into iRacing, and that was 2.5 years ago. So
Yeah, I know for me, it was NASCAR '09 was like my niche for the longest time. So I met most of my friends who then transitioned well through all the NASCAR games on the Xbox side, or they went to iRacing, and it was interesting to see how people would grow from those aspects and seeing your friends growing up that way. Because I know a lot of the guys that are trying to go for the Coke Series haven't made it yet, but their goal is to make that, and
that's really cool.
it's cool to see those growing pains for some people, you could say. Where you're like, man, you were terrible back in the day, but look at you now.
Absolutely terrible, right?
Yeah. Which, talking about that terrible at one point to getting better now, I mean, season 1 to season 2, where are you seeing some of these growths for drivers or for yourself in just these first 2 seasons for Wicked?
One of the one of the biggest things that does make me happy is the growth of some of the drivers. You know what I mean? I don't want to name names or whatever, but there's probably 5 or 6 guys who last season, I mean, they were all but wrecking balls. You know what I mean? And just to see them not only get better, but to see the interaction with the other drivers who are a little faster, maybe a little bit more consistent in how they're helping each other. That's very rewarding for me. You know what I mean? I wish I would have had a place like this when I was getting started and when I needed help. You know what I mean? It's super. That's something I'm really proud of, is kind of the culture that we have as far as guys who go to the practices on a regular basis, and the guys helping each other out and things like that. As far as myself, I was definitely, I think, finishing better last season overall. We just haven't had. We've caught more bad luck this season. We're still there. We're still in the top 3, top 5 at the end of the race. We just haven't been able to close out as often as we were last season. Speeding on pit road at Vegas on our last stop last week didn't help that. But yeah, that's so this season we're still consistent. I think we're second as far as race winners. I think we're second in points after the race winners. So we're still consistent, but definitely a little bit more so last year.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the stats, and I even said it during the Vegas race. I never realized how many times you'd finished third last season and
Yeah.
into this season. It blew it because I'm used to seeing people finish in the same spot maybe like 2 to like 3 times, like in their career, and they've been in like some leagues for like 5 seasons.
Sure.
In just a season and a half, you finished third 8 times. I mean, that is mind blowing to
It's
me.
8? I didn't know
It's
the number.
8. I didn't realize. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just look at some of the drivers' best finishes, and I saw it just third rattled down the stats. I was like,
Just
there
third,
has
third,
to
third,
be
third.
there has to be a joke here.
It's not.
But
It's
no,
it's not a good joke.
no, but at least it's consistent. I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna finish up front, but we're at the All-Star break at the time of recording this. We're heading into the final push of the regular season. There's only 4 more races left. But talking about this new season, we've had 8 races, 8 different winners. There's only 4 more spots left, 4 races left. Do you feel like a win is the only way you're going to get in, or do you feel like there might be a chance you can point your way into the playoffs?
It's getting to the point where I'm concerned that's going to be the only way to get in. A couple weeks ago, I the thought crossed my mind. I think I even put something in general, be like, oh, it doesn't matter, better get a win. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it in on points or not this season, but I didn't really think it was going to be a possibility. But with the tracks we have coming up, I mean, like you just said, we've had 8 races with 8 different winners, which is awesome. I mean, it's not great for me trying to point in right now, but it's great as far as a competition standpoint goes, and to see different guys winning every week. But we have 8 races, 8 different winners, and we have, the Roval this week, which can be a total oddball track. Somebody who doesn't typically run up front or get wins could win that week. We have a super speedway coming up in Atlanta, basically a super speedway. We have a short track, you know what I mean? So a lot could happen. Somebody who's already run one could obviously very easily win again. But especially the road course in Atlanta, man, I mean, that's anybody's race. So I think it's a real possibility that you might have to win a race to make it to the playoffs. If not, I think realistically maybe 2 of us might make it. I think we're going to see at least 2 more winners that haven't won yet, but fingers crossed. That's about all I can say. Hopefully we just get the win, right? And we don't have to worry about it. But
that's the ultimate goal with those last 2 races being Richmond and then North Wilkesboro. And,
yeah,
getting close to the playoffs. I know that you made it to the Final Four last season, was hunting for that championship. If you do make the playoffs, how strong or how confident do you feel that you could try to get that championship that you missed out on last season?
I feel confident, but I'll tell you what, we have some really fast drivers. I mean, you know as well as I do. I mean, Gavin is fast and consistent. Alex is very fast. He's his own worst enemy sometimes, but he's very quick. Obviously, we have Blaze now, who is in another area code. But if we can get there, sometimes it doesn't matter who's the fastest. These races are, I mean, we see it all the time. You know what I mean? Somebody makes one mistake or gets caught up in one silly thing, it can change the whole outcome of a season, more or less a race. So I feel like if we can get into the Final Four, I'm confident we can give them a run for sure.
Well, with this season coming to a close, I mean, certainly it's been awesome to watch how the progression has been, seeing all the drivers growing into their own. How has it been on your end, though, as an admin, seeing how these guys have are building up more of a community from season 1 to season 2, and getting to see that growth on that end of seeing a lot of these guys becoming friends with one another that maybe weren't friends back in season 1?
That was really it. To answer the question, it makes me very happy. It almost gets not. I'm not on the borderline of crying or anything, but it is kind of emotional in a way too, because that was always the first goal was always just to have fun and have a competitive, fun place for people to race. Everyone wants to have fun, but obviously everyone takes this maybe a little too seriously at times too, and we all acknowledge that. But the second biggest thing for me was always just to have a place where, those relationships could form and people could have real friendships. You know what I mean? Obviously, you're going to have issues within the league between people. 1 or 2 guys that don't get along, or this clique doesn't like this clique. It's just, the internet mirrors real life in that aspect. We're fortunate that it's minimal here. But I know just in whatever, it hasn't even been quite a year of us doing this yet, and I've already met multiple people from the league, and I know a couple other people have met in real life as well. And for that to happen, I mean that means a lot. You know what I mean? People, you don't ever know what people have going on the other end of the camera. You know what I mean, or on the other end of the car in this case. But I think it's easy, especially in the middle of a race. You forget that it's not just another car out there or whatever, not just a mindless robot out there racing with you. But it's nice to see that it's that's happened organically. Obviously, you can't really force that to happen. So for guys to really put themselves out there and to be there for each other, you know what I mean? I know we've had a couple guys have some tough issues, and we've responded as a league to help them and through those things is in every way that we could. So those are the things that make it worth it. You know what I mean? And in a way, obviously, the success of the league from a competition and a sponsorship standpoint is important, but that's definitely just as important to me to see that. So it means a lot.
It's been awesome to watch that growing aspect of seeing that community kind of come together in Wicked. It's been awesome to see just the drivers in general and the way that they've been able to become friends with one another, and that's always something that's kind of cool on the freaky fast broadcasting side of things, is because we're interacting and woven with so many different leagues to see who's becoming good friends. You kind of see those people that leave and come and go, but it's always cool to see the friendships that kind of bond over people that might have been mad with one another for like 2 seasons or so, and then become good friends later on. And it's always cool to see that. But back to racing aspect, you talked about Las Vegas, how that was kind of a fall off point for yourself. It was your worst finish in your history so far at Wicked. Oh, you've had your worst finishes this season with that competition that we talked about, how high it is. But with those upcoming races, which one of those 4 that we just talked about, going to that of the Roval, Atlanta, Richmond, and North Wilkesboro, is there one that you're feeling most confident about, or are they all the same mindset of let's just survive and see how it comes at the end?
No, I think at this point in the season, it's obviously you want to take care of the car and try to get a good finish, because you're never guaranteed to, if you throw it in there and throw caution to the wind, you might not get the win, and if you do that, you might end up a lot worse than you would have otherwise. And if you can't get the win, obviously points, especially where I am right now in such a close battle with Steven and some of the other guys right on the cut line, you have to consider that. But my approach will be a little bit different. I am pretty conservative, especially in the beginning of races, to try to be there at the end, and that usually works. You know what I mean? We've talked about the consistency, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. And especially at the Roval and at Richmond, I'm going to probably be a little more aggressive than I have in the past, because I'm really good at the Roval. I've been grinding. I didn't really have much experience there, but I figured out the track a lot quicker than I usually do at road courses. And I'm running times as fast as Alex, which doesn't normally happen in practices. So I have some confidence going in there. And we're pretty good about not making mistakes and putting ourselves in a situation which will be good for the road course. I also have some ideas about a different strategy that I might try there too. And then Richmond, Richmond's one of my better tracks. So if there's a place that I think we can capitalize on and try to get locked in, I think it would be one of those 2. I don't have any experience at North Wilkesboro. I don't think I've raced any races there. And then Atlanta, it's kind of hard to plan for Atlanta the way it is now. So
yeah, it definitely is, especially when you look back to last season at Atlanta. That race was crazy.
Yeah, it was. It was nuts.
Johnny Shea got that win there. It was interesting. I mean, a lot of the super speedway races always come down to crazy finishes at the end. We got to see first time winner of Jimmy Kubinick getting himself in victory lane for his first win, and we've seen a lot of first time winners this season with those 8 different winners this season. Seeing Jimmy win was kind of a cool moment for me in a way, watching from an outside perspective, being the driver last season and then into the booth this year. I mean, how is that for you as an admin, seeing those drivers that you watched season 1 get their first victories in season 2 and hopefully further beyond?
Oh, I love to see it. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I love that Gavin is as fast as Gavin is. You know what I mean? But the Jimmy win stands out a lot in my mind. Jimmy's and Johnny Shade's win as well. Those he had multiple wins at super speedways last season. Those are 2 guys that they both tend, they'll get down on themselves sometimes, and they'll beat themselves up a lot, which we're all guilty of. But to see them both get those wins, I was as happy for Jimmy winning his race as I was for if I would have won. Same with Steven, Steven Borbell, my teammate, who he's quickly become a legitimately close friend of mine. For him to get his win this year was great too. I was super happy for him as well, especially to get locked in that early. That's like I said, it's always great to see guys win multiple races because I think that breeds the competition. I think that makes all of us want to try a little bit harder. But for those guys that might not always run up front, even to get in there, is great. I love to see it. I think it throws a wrench into things too. I think some people have a certain idea of how they think the season's going to look and how it's going to work out, and for them to kind of sneak their way in there, I think is really interesting, and it adds another level of entertainment for sure. So.
But moving forward, let's get to know you a little bit more. What other, besides racing, because we've got to talk about racing for as long as we did here, what are some other hobbies or things that maybe people won't always recognize to see about you? As we see in the background, yes, you're a collector of items. What else do you get yourself, or hobbies that you find yourself getting into?
I'm a musician. That's probably something that doesn't get brought up very often. That was my first love before racing or before anything really. I started playing the saxophone when I was eight or nine, and I'm 34. Going to be 34 in April. I play guitar as well. Different kinds of guitars, acoustic, electric. I play bass too, and I write. I can't sing though. Not much of a singer, but I do write. That's kind of always been my my escape, if you will. If I'm having a rough time or got something going on, that's always been kind of how I've dealt with it, was through writing and through music. I write my own songs. They're not very good, but I write them anyway. So yeah, musician was my first love. And that's probably my only other big hobby. As you know, I just got married last year and we bought a house, so that's keeping me pretty busy. But yeah, the music is a huge part of my life and still is. Oh, and I'm an animal lover. My wife and I both volunteer at our local animal shelter where we got one of our dogs from, so we do that on a regular basis. But yeah, that's about all the hobbies. iRacing and marriage takes up a lot of time. So
Yeah, I can agree that iRacing does take up a lot of time, and I'd imagine marriage fills up everything else pretty quickly.
yeah, it fills up quick, man.
But back to that music. Is there like a certain genre that you're really into, or while you're writing, or is it just write anything that comes to mind type of a thing?
Yeah, I definitely have a niche. I would say it's probably more of a everything I write personally has always been just me and an acoustic guitar. So it has that kind of, I would say, like bluesy pop feel to it. It's not like hard blues, you know what I mean? But it's also not poppy music. It's somewhere in between, maybe like well, that's, I don't know. Chris Stapleton comes to mind, kind of his style, the way his songs are structured. At least mine aren't country in lyric or twang, but that same structure as far as the chords he uses and the different tempos and kind of the basic structures his songs follow, would probably be someone I would compare my style to. I'm not nearly as good as him, obviously. He's incredible. Seeing him do the anthem this year was awesome, so he killed that. But yeah, that would be kind of the way I would describe it.
I mean, that's awesome that you found that niche to go into. I know for me, I'm always jealous of songwriters because I'm just like, I have no idea how to take this, what's in my brain, down to paper and for it to sound all right.
It's funny because that's the only way I seem to be able to get that stuff out. You know what I mean? I've never been the best at. My wife always tells me, I'm like this. I don't tend to go up or down very often. So I'm not great at communicating that stuff, verbally, but that's always been the only way I could seem to get it out was by writing it. So I guess maybe I'm fortunate in that way. Not so fortunate with the not being able to share, I guess. But I guess everybody figures out a way to get it out, right?
That's 100% sure on that. I mean, for me, I feel like it's what commentating in a way for me is like vocalizing it myself out there in a way. I mean, that was how I did it for years. Was just, I mean, commentating for me was never a like I'm going to do this. That's my career path I'm going to go into. It was just something I was doing randomly. Like I'd be in like PE class growing up and I'd be like commentating over PE classes and games going on, or would be watching NASCAR growing up and be like, I can do that. They're just talking type of thing. So it's just an easy way to communicate.
That's really interesting, man. I never looked at it from that point of view before. I'm sure that can be very cathartic in a way. You know what I mean? That's really cool. I never thought about that. I'm glad you found that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's always interesting when you get those different ways to communicate, because like I know a lot of people, they find different ways of, for it's painting for others, maybe it's taking photos
Sure.
and their other creative paths to find ways to communicate. So it's always awesome when you can find that one niche that you get into and you're just like, yes.
Yeah, and I think that you found something that you're great. You were by far the highlight of, I mean, no offense to anybody else at Freaky Fast. Everyone does a great job, but your voice was always one that stuck out to me, and I know to the other admins too, before you guys even came to the league. Obviously, I had worked with you guys, not directly, but was a part of the broadcast in a different league a few years back, so I was already familiar with the style and stuff like that. But no, that's really great that you found that, and you do a great job. You're really good at it. So I'm glad that you have that.
Yeah, I mean it was kind of a unique way that I got into Freaky Fast broadcasting, of just like interesting how I got kind of pushed away from one broadcast team, then I've like reached out because my brother raced for Freaky Fast, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna join in. Let's see if this is gonna mesh well, if we got chemistry here, because it's all about finding that right chemistry.
Of course.
And yeah, it's cool to see how it's grown into my spazzy self, that people actually enjoy it sometimes.
I love it.
Especially when it comes down to your guys' finishes. I mean, you guys always seem to find ways. We wanted to start out the top 5 finishes, aspect of having those videos in Freaky Fast, and it always seemed like I would go through the month, and there you guys are with like 2 or 3 great finishes at the end, where we're going crazy at the end of these finishes. And we've had certainly a couple of those with, seeing Alex's finish was probably one of the more memorable ones at Bristol, with him and seeing him and Gavin get into it, and Mason as well, and
and
seeing that drama build up in a way, and seeing their fun aftermath in the
great
post-race
TV
show.
it's
always fun.
Not great in the chat afterwards, but great TV.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Adam, before we conclude this, are there any things that you have questions for, maybe for myself or for Freaky Fast in general?
Oh man, sure. How did you guys, if you don't mind me asking, how did you guys kind of form, like obviously you guys have a very set structure on how you guys do this, and the way you go about, setting up the races every week and stuff like that. Is that something that's just kind of built up organically? Trial and error, I'm sure similar to the way I've learned how to do things managing the league. Was it kind of just a team effort? Did it kind of grow just from figuring it out as you went, or did it start off as kind of a plan?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of started off with our own different thoughts on how we thought broadcasting should go. Like, if we take a race breakdown in a way, like I go and write notes probably an hour before the race. I'm like writing notes, looking up stats for the racetrack, of real life stats to each person's own stats, and trying to have like a note page of that to have notes just in case the race kind of gets into a lull period, that I have stuff to talk about.
Sure.
And then on Robert's side, who produces it, he has his own, has to make sure all the logos and everything's set and prepared. And then once we hit the live button, we kind of talk a little bit before, when we have our 5-minute wind down, right before we started up, we have a conversation of like, okay, these are the moments that we kind of want to hit in the pre-show, and we kind of go in that form of, all right, let's make sure we say, the race that we're at, who are we type of format. And after doing it for a while, we kind of get too comfortable, and then we realize, okay, what can we change up and shift? And some of that comes from our end of the season surveys that I throw out of like, okay, what do you guys like about a broadcast? What do you want to change? And we then figure out ways to fine tune what we already have built. But it was a lot of, I brought my past experiences, and Robert and Zach and everyone else that works at the team, they brought their own experiences in of doing other broadcasts, and took what we all liked from everything that we've done before, and we're like, okay, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? And if it sticks, then it works out great. I used to be the worst at it. It'd be like 5 minutes before we go live. I'd be like, hey, Robert, why don't we try this for the broadcast? I'd be like, I can try to do that. And so
Right.
we'll do an interview that's just on a whim, or we'll try to bring up a graphic that we had just prepared like the day before that
Right.
we really weren't prepared to bring up, but we're like, oh, let's just try it out. So sometimes it's organized when we try to build on things, and other times it's kind of on a whim that we just hope that it sticks, and if it does, then we continue, and if it felt awkward, then we usually take it out.
Sure. No, that's really interesting. I've always, in the back of my mind, I think I've always thought about trying to not now obviously, but maybe sometime in the future, try to do something like that. I've always been interested in it as well, as far as from a commentating standpoint. I just think it's really interesting. It's kind of its own art form, you know what I mean? Because you have to, once you hit the live button, you're live. You can't rewind, you know what I mean? So you have to kind of be able to work off the cuff, which is a talent amongst itself. And you seem a lot like myself. I don't want to be presumptuous, but I have a brain full of useless facts, NASCAR and otherwise, so I could usually keep that going for a while. But no, you guys do such a great job, man. I was just kind of curious when you put it together. I knew the basics, you know what I mean, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of, I mean, like you said, it's a lot of live on the whim. You hope for that it comes out right. And Zach and I both said it multiple times after we're done like debriefing after a broadcast. We're like, man, after I said that one statement, I immediately thought to myself, that was a dumb thing to say.
Like, why did I say that? Right?
Why did I say that? Or you realize,
like,
or you realize that you're saying the same thing over and over again. Like you have the same phrase that you keep on going to, or the same word that you're just fixated on for the whole entire race. You're like, I just cannot get away from this.
Can't get away from that. I 100% know what you mean. I part of my job is talking. Half my job is math, my other half is talking, and I'll do that with clients a lot too. You'll notice halfway through a meeting that you're maybe not saying the same thing over and over again, but saying the same version of the same thing over and over again, and it seems like the more you try to get away from it, the more you say it. So I can empathize with that.
Oh, and then you try to look up in the dictionary and you're like, okay, I said this word so many times. What are the other words I can use?
Breaking out the thesaurus.
Oh, absolutely. That is, it's always a joy whenever someone like points out, they're like, you said this phrase this many amount of times. Someone did that
times.
to me. Oh yeah. Someone was like, you said that of, I think almost 120
That's
times
so
throughout the whole entire
funny.
race. And I'm like, I didn't even realize it.
Never
and
even
I went
occurred
back
to you.
and watched and I was like, oh, that's my transition phrase. If I'm going on a long form, like just talking for like 5 minutes, that's my transition word I was using.
It's funny because I can hear you saying that in hindsight. It is kind of one of your phrases while you're broadcasting, so that's funny. That's someone was very observant that day.
Oh, they were bored on a road course race, which that's usually
That'll
when they
do
start
it.
to point stuff out, and they're like,
That'll do
yeah.
it. Yep.
Well,
That'll do it.
Any other questions, or are we good, Adam?
No, man. No, this was really fun. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for taking the time and having me on. I appreciate that.
Well, it was a pleasure to have you. It's crazy to think this is actually our first one-on-one like conversation, and
I
it's
was
crazy
thinking
to think
about.
that.
I didn't think about it until like 5 or 6 minutes into this, actually. But I was like, I've never talked to Sam before.
Yeah. I'm a very, with how open I am on commentating, I'm a very like quiet person when it comes to like interacting with people like throughout the leagues and making sure that everyone's good. So it's always interesting when they're like, oh wait, this is Sam. I know for Wicked, they know me from Driver Sam, who was kind of a jerk when I was on track and over the radio. So they only knew me as that. So it's funny to see when we finally actually get to have conversations. And I think that's always the thing about racing is once you have those conversations, you realize, oh, they're just people.
They're just people. Right. That's kind of what I was trying to reiterate earlier, is that they're just people. You know what I mean? And it can be hard. I can empathize from what you were just mentioning about like driver Sam to person Sam, because obviously, Adam, the league manager, that's not who I am as a person. You know what I mean? Obviously, bits of my personality come through. Obviously, it's just the nature of it. But you have to be a certain way all the time doing that. You know what I mean? And obviously, you can let your guard down when not your guard, but you can be a little more open with people that you do have a real friendship with, or in private messaging and things like that. But every message I send anywhere in the Discord has to be structured and formed in a way, in a specific way. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it is when you do something like this. You know what I mean? So it's just something I have to be mindful of. But I think a lot of people probably think I'm a certain way, and it's probably the polar opposite of how I am in real life. But I don't know if that's the military experience or what. I tend to be very to the point. I know that might not be everyone's favorite way to do things sometimes, but I found it as usually the most effective, you know what I mean, and the best way to not hurt feelings. So I can understand where you're coming from with that for sure.
Oh, I completely agree. That's like the most direct way and the easiest way for people to understand. And yeah, it's good. But man, thanks for having a conversation with me, Adam. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And man, I can't wait to see how the rest of the season is going to happen for Wicked. And good luck for the rest of the season.
Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It was legitimately nice talking to you. I appreciate it.
This is the one thing I love the most about the cool down lap. It allows us as Freaky Fast Broadcasting to interact with the drivers on a deeper level. It was a great conversation with that of Adam Buzzeo. And let's head over to Thursday night. Stars and Stripes, our very own Zach Hall got to talk to the 3-time champ of Kyle McCoy.
All right, welcome everybody. It is the second episode of the Cool Down Lap, the Freaky Fast podcast. This is the Stars and Stripes racing segment, and I got a very special guest with me here tonight, and it's the 3-time champion, Kyle McCoy. Man, how's it going today?
Oh, pretty good, man. Pretty good. I always like hearing that 3-time in front of my name. It's fun.
It definitely is, man. I know you cherish those 3 championships, and I'm sure we'll get more into those championships here as we get into the segment here tonight. And, first really question I think everybody asks when they go into iRacing, or someone when they want to ask about their iRacing career, is how did you exactly find iRacing? Because I think it's always an interesting story to see how people got into the simulator.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about it, I guess, because it's been a long time. You kind of forget how fast things go. I got into iRacing probably in 2016. At that time, I was in North Carolina. I couldn't tell you how I exactly came across it. I think it was kind of starting to get popular at that point, right? I didn't get on super early, so I don't have like a really cool story for anybody listening. But I kind of jumped in, and when I first jumped in, I just knew I really wanted to race. And I had a laptop and I had a controller. I was a controller Andy to start out, so it was an interesting rookie street stocks to say the least. And after that, I kind of got going. But I couldn't tell you exactly how I found it, other than I think at that point number one, I was in North Carolina, so I was kind of in that racing kind of circle. I worked at a go-kart track. If I had to bet, I'd bet that's where I probably heard first of it. So we'll go with that. We'll say go-kart track.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. That you lived in North Carolina. I also do myself, so I know it's kind of bred into North Carolina, the racing background. So it's always cool to see how people got into it. And then also, you're talking about a controller and a laptop is what you started off with. It's always cool to see what people start with. Like you said, that's what your starter equipment was. What was, what are you currently using, and have you changed any of that over the years you've been racing?
Sure. So yeah, I started with a PS4 controller on a HP laptop. So not only was it an awful setup to start, it wasn't even like technologically up to date back then, right? So I think I had minimum graphics. I had controllers. I remember going around USA and having my thumb worn out from using the left trigger on the or the left analog on the controller. So obviously not racing on that anymore. That was it's not successful in today's world. So after that I bought a T27, Logitech T27, I think in 2017, from some guy who used to play, I think like Forza on it or something, or GTA or something like that for $200. And kind of went from there. And to be honest, I was pretty good with it, and I'm still using it today. I actually broke the original one back during last year's Stars and Stripes season, and Derek Offerman, I'll give him a huge shout out. He sent me one for free. I don't know what compelled him to do that, but I appreciate it a ton. So I'm still using a G27. Sitting here with a G27, I've got it HDMI'd up to my little 34-inch TV, and I luckily upgraded my computer about last year, so I'm kind of up to date on that. But I'm not super tech savvy, so I kind of bought it as it is, and that's what we're racing with now. So
That's really cool, man. I love the tried and true G27. I started off on that myself, and it was, it is exactly what you need for iRacing. I mean, personally, like it's nothing too crazy, but it's exactly what you need to be able to feel and be able to do what you need to do on the track. So, I mean, that is so cool to see that that's what you rock with, because I know there's a lot of guys even in the Pro Series that they went up and got through the direct drive wheels, and some of them even went back to the G27 just because they were so used to that style of a wheel and how well it's performed over all these years. So really, really
Right.
cool. Yeah, it is.
yeah, I mean,
It's one of those things that's cool to see, like multiple different people running the same equipment like that and really falling in love with it.
absolutely, yeah. That's a good way to put it. I mean, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, right? But yeah, it gets the job done. And to be honest, like you said, when I broke my original one, I raced on a G29. My friend had lent me for a couple weeks, and I mean, I couldn't race with it. I struggled really hard on that wheel, and I think it was more just because I was so used to this setup. So I think it'd be hard to upgrade even at this point, just because I know what I'm getting here. So yeah, yeah, you nailed it.
I have a very similar path myself. My friend is, I started on the G27. Mine broke. I believe something cracked in the centering in it, and it just would not go back to center. And it would slowly, as time went on, it'd be farther to the left as the race went on. And my buddy sent me a G29 because he had an extra one, and I tried to use it, and I just could not get the same feel out of it as the 27. It was similar, but there is still those small differences that the 27 had that just gave you that better feel, in my opinion. So that's cool to hear that you had this similar experience with
I was
that.
gonna say you've been down the same path, man. Yeah,
Yep.
that's exactly it. So
It is always cool to see how that works out, man. And it is cool to see all the people's different setups. I mean, you got guys setups out there thousands of dollars, and you got guys setups that are, a couple $100. And I think it's cool to see how they don't, it doesn't represent how your performance level is either. It kind of is one of those things where you can outperform your equipment. I mean, it doesn't matter what you got. You can go out there and still get things done. I mean, clearly with you being a 3-time champion.
yeah. I mean, my setup isn't too flashy, but it absolutely gets the job done, and makes it all the more fun sometimes when you can beat some guys on those rich setups. But
That's exactly right, man. Well, those were great, I think, questions to start out with. But I think one of the underlying things is here, you've been with Stars and Stripes now for 6 straight seasons. I mean, you've been a tried and true member, always out there racing and putting, yourself on the line out there. How did you actually come across Stars and Stripes at the beginning? Because, like I said, you've been here since season 1 and actually with the champion of the inaugural season.
oh man, this is a good story. So actually, Nate and I met in a different league. It was the first league I'd ever run. Probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And we were some of the faster guys in that league, and it was kind of wasn't run very well. I'll just say it nicely. And so that league kind of folded, and Nate said, would you be interested if I started my own? And I, at the time you're thinking, well, of course, but also you'd never dream that it would grow into something like this, right? Like that'd be this strong running for 6 seasons. It's crazy to think back on those days. I think we ran one race together in Texas in that other league, and then he said, "Are you game to go?" And I jumped right in. So yeah, it's been so fun ever since then, and yeah, we kind of met from the beginning, so it's been fun to be along for the ride.
That's a great story there, man. It always seems like that's how it is. Friendships begin, and you kind of get lured into something else, and then boom, you never know you're there for 6 straight seasons. So it's really cool to hear.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's been a long ways, but yeah, couldn't be happier.
Well, over those 6 seasons, how do you feel like the league has changed and grown? Because I know the competition has always gotten stiffer and stiffer. It seems like each season. What is your biggest things you've seen over these past 6 seasons?
Yeah, I mean the racing is just like the leaps and bounds of what it was, and I mean it was still, the way you build a league. I think Nate and Derek and Brian have all done a really good job of putting this together. is to start out by saying race clean, and then you work up to the threshold, right? You kind of work up to that edge of like, okay, we're racing clean, but we're also racing hard, rather than coming from the other direction, which I think a lot of leagues make the mistake of, is we don't want to have rules, we don't want to have regulations. We just want everybody to have fun and race hard, and then you end up with these crash fests, and people leave. You get a lot of like turnover that way. So I think we started out kind of saying, let's race clean, and then let's work up to racing hard. And as we've done that, I think we've seen a lot of improvement in individual drivers, that's been so fun to watch. Some of the guys that ran well, I mean, at the beginning, but now are really running up front day to day. And obviously, we've had a lot of people come in too, but yeah, kind of that initial underlying factor of let's race clean, and then you get these really good races sometimes that we put on where we don't have very many yellows. But it has built up to this point where now competition's so even that you do have to race hard for spots, and sometimes you have to draw the line in the sand of where you race clean and race hard. But it's growing, and I think the etiquette is still there in this league, which is hard to find sometimes.
It definitely is, man. I always say it's one of the cleanest leagues, but y'all always race hard, like you brought up that, it's not just, let people go by. It's always hard racing. And I mean, y'all have plenty of times over these seasons that we've broadcasted that y'all have gone completely green, and I think that's an awesome thing to have at your league where the race plays out full length and, you have green flag stops, you have strategy, actually playing out when to pick and choose your tires. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, man.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part of that is when you get these guys that come in, either when they're first starting out or just new guys that are subs or, joining for a limited amount of time, you'll see, I mean, the racecraft part of this league, it's real, and you have to have it if you want to win. And there's lots of days where, I mean, not only do you have to be good, you basically have to be perfect if you want to win some of these races, because the strategy that goes into it, sometimes you can just get caught off guard on strategy. And a lot of times these guys just aren't racing, like they're not racing to have those tires on in 50 laps. You expect a yellow in 10 laps, and you'll see a lot of guys kind of charge hard and then fall off and have to learn a little bit different pace style in this league, which is fun. It's rewarding for us that have been here a while and kind of know what to expect, but also is just interesting to watch because it's a different style of racing, I'd say, than what you find in a lot of the official stuff.
I completely agree there, man. I mean, it's very difficult to get wins in this league, in my opinion. And over those 6 seasons, you've had 23 of them. I mean, that's a ton of wins that you've had so far in the 6 seasons. Do you have like one that sticks out to you as like a favorite memory or something like that? Because I mean, I'm sure it's hard to go back with all the wins you've had, but does one ever really stick out to you?
Man, nobody's asked me that question before, and I haven't realized how hard it is to come up with an answer until right this second. But I think definitely I always like slide back to that Xfinity season, and kind of that playoff run. I don't think I've ever raced as well as I did during that time. I think that car especially is good for me, so I don't know if I could do it again, but I always look back at those wins. Bristol, Homestead, some of those tracks in that stretch, Atlanta, that were just really good to me. And yeah, that's a time where I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I could be at that level again, right? Like, there's not very many times where you're kind of at peak performance and it's hard to sustain, So I look back at those wins and think, man, those were some tough ones to get because the competition was there, but they were also really fun because they were tracks that I knew I was decent at, but had to pull a little extra out.
No doubt. I vividly remember that, man. I think that's even where we'll get into like our next question for you is like, you won 4 of the last 5 races that season. Like, it was amazing to see, and you turned it up. Like, the regular season wasn't the greatest for you. You had a good regular season, but you just, out of nowhere, coming into the playoffs, it just seemed like something clicked, and you were unstoppable at some points. I mean, I think even before the 4 out of 5 wins, you had a second-place finish at, like, Talladega. So, I mean, to look at that, I mean, I coined it on the broadcast. I know I said it a lot of times to you. I called it the clutch factor. It seemed like you just had that when it came down to the end of the year type of feeling that you could get it done when it needed to be most. And, 3 championships, so it's proven you've had that, and it's always been like the playoffs have been where you've performed the best. What do you think comes down to that to make it so much into your hands? Because, man, it just seems like when it gets down to playoff times, you're the guy to beat always.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different factors. Honestly, I wanna take full credit and just say, oh man, I just mental toughness, something like that. And there's an element of that absolutely, that you have to just. I don't want to call it toughness. I want to call it more like even keeled. I think back to Ross Chastain's win at Coda last year, where he said he was trying to kind of not get too high on the highs and too low on the lows, and I don't know that he necessarily does a fantastic job of that all the time. But I think that quality is super important, to understand that these races are not short, and you have to be patient, but also on your game to win them. So I think that's a factor. I think I said a couple weeks on the broadcast, the schedule's kind of at the late end of the season. I'm not trying to make any excuses, but I think those tracks sometimes fall in a little more in my wheelhouse too. That always it always helps to go in with a little extra advantage, right? Like I don't think if we had a ton of short tracks at the end of that season that I would have clicked off the same amount of stats that we did that year. And I think also a little bit more of that goes into the racecraft part of it, right? Because you get these a lot of times we'll have these seasons and you start out with a lot of guys, and as you kind of dwindle down, these guys maybe starting to realize that they don't have that racecraft to race with us on a weekly basis. Whether we always like to develop that in our drivers, but not everybody's going to be that patient to wait to develop that. So we get a little smaller fields, get a little more green racing, and I think that's a little bit more in my wheelhouse. Not necessarily the short 5-lap sprints, but more of a methodical approach to the race. And I think all of those factors together kind of creates that perfect storm there at the end of the year for me.
I completely agree, man. I think you really seem to just put it all together, and like you said, methodical. I think that's one thing you've had over all the seasons is you just methodically know how to work your way through the races and just not put yourself in too many bad situations. You know when to go and when not to go, pretty much. So it is something that I've took a lot of learning from even myself, just watching you out there race and commentating it with Sam and having Robert up there producing. We've always seen that from you, so man, it's always been a pleasure to see that, and we know when it comes to down the playoff time, you've been a huge factor as always. So I'm sure at some point if you can get back full time, you'll be able to put that pressure back on during playoff time.
Yeah, I'm hoping during this summer, we'll kind of next season we'll be able to get back to full-time racing and hopefully give these guys another run for this stuff. Yeah, it's been a little crazy the last 6 months, but that's okay. That's part of life, right? So, yeah, you always hear these like cup drivers talk about that kind of patience, like being there at the end of races, being smart, being safe, and you don't necessarily associate that with racing a lot of times. So it's interesting to. I think it's fun for the everyday person to be able to get on iRacing and kind of feel some of those things that they're feeling too. So it's that whole thing is cool.
That it definitely is, man. Well, like you said, no longer full-time racing at the moment. Hopefully, like you said, coming up next season, you'll be able to get back to full-time racing. Do you feel like there's kind of less pressure now that you're going out there and racing, not really worrying about any type of championships? It's just kind of go out there, racing each race as its own and, trying to go out there getting wins.
Yeah, it's a bit of a change of pace, and I've enjoyed it so far this year. I kind of knew right away that I was not going to be able to make all the races, and it was going to be tough to keep myself in the playoff hunt. So it's changed my approach a little bit. And to be probably not for the better if we're being honest, because what we just talked about in the last 10 minutes probably flies out the window at that point, right? Like, thinking back to this last week in Nashville, I just kind of I knew the track wasn't my best. I kind of just went hard and tried to put myself up front, and of course I ended up in a wreck. So it's gonna be interesting to balance that, but I think over the next 4 or 5 weeks it's gonna be fun because there's some good tracks up on the schedule, and yeah, it's fun to just go and race, right? Like that's why we're all on here in the first place, So I'm hoping to click off a couple more. It should be a fun stretch of the season and keep myself out of the melee once the playoffs hit. So.
Heck yeah, man! I tell you, yeah, it's always fun to watch you guys do battle, and now that you've not been full time racing, I can see that. Yeah, you're going a little bit harder for those races, especially. I mean, you got nothing on the line. I mean, you got to go out there and try it, and even looking back to season 1, you won the championship. How do you feel like the car has changed over then? Because it's. I mean, I know the league has changed. You got new drivers out there to battle for sure. You got drivers from past in season 1 that you battled that you're still battling right now. I mean. do you feel like the car's changed a good little bit? Because I feel like over time iRacing has, gone through its changes and updates.
Yeah, for sure. I think especially now that we've made a full circle, right? We've gone from ARCA up through the ranks, trucks, Xfinity Cup, and then next gen. Now we're back at the ARCA cars, and you can kind of start to at least draw a little bit of a line to season one and say this is how things compared. I think about a lot about how the ARCA car before, I think in season one probably wasn't. I want to say wasn't in the track. If that's, I don't know. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But just now it feels like so much more like you can feel all the bumps as iRacing and the technology have increased. You get these little nuances that you didn't have before. I think a lot of times, just more driver line would win out on those tracks in season one, and now you have to be a little bit smarter. And you're battling. I was thinking about this today. You're battling for every inch, right? Like if you're not thinking that way, you're losing inches literally probably every lap. So I think it's way more in the track. The tires obviously feel different. I don't know that they're necessarily better or worse than they have been in the past. I think that's just going to be something that it's constantly evolving, right? And I don't think anybody's really going to wrap their arms around that until they stick with something for a while. So that part of it, you can take or leave. But I think overall the car feels like it's more on the track. Feels like you can, as they've tried to develop a car that races better in multiple grooves, right? You get a little bit more of a sketchy setup most of the time. So I think that probably plays a hand too. I think looking back at how the ARCA car used to drive in season one, it probably drove pretty easy. I can't remember off the top of my head for sure, but I can't remember a lot of races where we're just like up to the very edge, and spinning out off every corner. And now it feels like this car, you can really drive it off the right rear if you want to. Now you have to take into account, driver craft and how you take care of tires and take care of car. But I think you have a little bit more leeway to drive it how you want to, which is the first step, I think, to getting us to where we can really see some different types of drivers step up and show out. So
Yeah, no doubt there for sure. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see how iRacing has changed over the time, and the tire, just even everything. I mean, the damage models, it's all completely different than back to season one for you guys. So it's cool to see a little bit of those differences and new drivers coming in and having their way with it with their driving style. So it's really cool to see how that's worked out. But I think one of the coolest things you already talked a little bit about Nashville this past weekend, or past Thursday. Then also the week before that, you won at Las Vegas, but we did have an update with this, with the iRacing here. The new build just came out this past week, and y'all had a race on Thursday, and there was a little bit of a change up for the ARCA car. iRacing made a small little slip up, and I think this is a slip up a lot of people actually enjoyed, and iRacing has kind of went back and said, oh, this was a mistake, but we're going to keep this and also bring back the old package of the engine. So anybody out there listening, pretty much what happened is iRacing put out an update, and the ARCA car got bugged, where it actually had 800 horsepower instead of the 550 horsepower package that it had previously. And I mean, that's a good bit of horsepower gain. I mean, you're looking at 250 horsepower right there additional to the rear wheels. I mean, it's definitely changed how the car's driven, and it's had so much like enjoyment out of people that iRacing's actually decided to make a Gen 4 series to let that car continue racing because so many people enjoyed how it drove. I mean, how did that engine package throw y'all guys for a loop this week at Nashville? And also, like, for the future, I mean, I know that there are still discussions of what's going to be going on there, and I'm unsure maybe if that decision has been made, but what would you like to see for the future with the package? Would you like to see it go back to 550, or would you like to see it stay at this 800?
Oh man, it's interesting, right? Because you got two different kind of schools of thought. One is that the 800 package is clearly more fun, right? Like it's just a little more driver skill, a little bit. You have to be a little more careful. The race at Nashville was crazy because you were kind of on pins and needles the whole time, and I wonder. I've wondered this since we raced there whether or not it would have been that way anyway. Like that track is always a kind of treacherous. So I don't know how it would have driven differently, but it was definitely a handful. So you got kind of two schools of thought where one is the 800 package is fun. You generally do see a little more skill rise out of that situation. You have to keep the car under you. Obviously, the harder it is to drive, the longer you have to do that. It's going to be super tough. I know Nate and I were talking about how our arms hurt after that 130, 35 lap run. we're like, man, this thing's a beast to hang on to. But the other side of it is that we've run half the season, with the 550 package. So I don't know what I prefer. I think my personal opinion is that whatever car they put us out with, the best drivers are going to win on it regardless. So I think if you're trying to make an argument one way or another, it's probably you're probably trying to hedge your bet a little bit. So I would be cool either way. I'm excited to see kind of how that car races. It's going to be interesting racing in this upcoming season to see what happens. It's just cool to have that car back, right? That car is such an iconic piece of NASCAR history. So it'll be fun to race. I wouldn't hate racing it here, but I also wouldn't hate it if they kept us with our original package because I know we kind of want to be true to what the season has, So I don't know. I'll leave those up to the guys in charge and see what they come up with, and I'll try to win either way.
Yeah, man, I understand that completely, and I think the statement you made that is the most important there with that is the guys who perform well with the 550 package, I think are still going to perform well with either one. So it's kind of universal. I think the best drivers are still going to show out when they can, and each week in and week out. So I think either way, we're going to get great racing. I know for my selfish reasons, I really want to see what this car does for like some mile and a half with the 800 package, just because I know I did a little racing with it. And man, you just got to drive this thing off the right rear now with that 800 horsepower package, and it just adds that whole different aspect to the racing. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've had some fantastic races, especially with guys comers and goers still. The tires falling off and drivers saving there a little bit coming through. I think Andrew Hess, the 5, I mean, I've said it all season, I feel like he's been one of the best drivers at just really picking up the speed as the run goes on and keeping his same continuous pace. But, I feel like, with that 800 horsepower package we saw at Nashville, I mean, like you said, too, I think either way Nashville would have been difficult and tough. But I think you get to see that much more where there's more mistakes possible around each corner. And, I think that opens up the opportunities for more passing and also just more, strategic mind play with how you're going to save your tires, how you're going to use your equipment. So I totally agree with you. I think either way, it's going to be a great rest of the season, but for my selfish reasons, I know I'm a big fan of the horsepower. So if they keep that, I'll be happy. Either way, though, the 550, we're going to still have fantastic racing on Thursday nights. It's always a pleasure to be up in the booth with Sam covering it. So I can't wait to see what the future holds for the rest of the season and see who can go out there and get this stuff done.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun second half. I think you kind of nailed it. I think the 550 kind of drives a little more off the right front, and then if we were to switch to the 800, yeah, we'd absolutely be driving more off the right rear. So you have two very different methods in which the car drives, which is probably going to really change. I mean, the drivers that are up front or the drivers that can save. Like you were saying, I agree. Andrew's been fantastic with that 550 package, but yeah, if we get the 800, it's going to be interesting to see how it changes kind of the playing field. And yeah, it's going to be fun. Either way, they're a handful. Well, I mean, that Las Vegas race was kind of weird because we were all packed up in that 550 package. So, I mean, if we have some more of those, I mean, anything can happen also. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. We'll see how the season goes. Yeah.
It definitely is looking pretty tasty for the rest of the season. I can say it's going to be fun to watch it all play out. And, talking about the last half of the schedule, really, I know that you won't most likely be able to make it to all of these races, but is there any track that's left on the schedule for this season that you're kind of looking forward to and saying, hey, man, that's a track that I'm really excited to go to and see if I can go out and get myself another win?
Oh, man. Yeah, I think I'm going to be able to make a lot of these races coming up, so I'm pretty excited. The next month of races, I mean, I've got them all circled, and not necessarily because I'm good at every one of them, but just because they're going to be a ton of fun. Chicagoland, I'm from kind of Illinois-ish, so that's kind of, I view that as my home track, and always like to show up and give a little extra effort there. So I'm going to be hopefully bringing my best stuff this weekend. It'll be interesting to see like you said, what they decide for the package on that one. And then Five Flags in North Wilkesboro we got up in the next month also, and I mean, 2 more short track, kind of very similar to Nashville, that are just going to be, I mean, a ton of fun to drive. Tracks we don't go to. I think it's the first time we'll go there in the Stars and Stripes history. So fun stuff. If you can be the inaugural winner there, I mean, that's a lot of bragging rights too. So very excited to go to those places. And obviously Darlington. Darlington's always like one of my favorite places to go because I think it really showcases who can get around a place with a little bit more care and a little bit a little bit less margin for error. So that track's always fun. And then the playoffs, I think we go to Bristol for the championship race, which is just that's gonna be wild. I don't know what to expect there. I'm subtly glad that I won't be a huge part of the story there. So that'd be crazy. We got some good races coming up. I'm very excited for this next month for sure.
Oh, no doubt. I it's funny because you bring up Bristol, and me and Sam the other day were sitting in the booth, and we said, "Oh man, is there a mess up on the schedule? Is Bristol the last race? Is there a next half or next part to this schedule here?" We're like, "No, there's not." Okay, this is going to be very interesting when we get to Bristol and see who those final four are competing for a championship. So I can't wait to get there and close out the season and see who can add their names to the list of champions that have been here at Stars and Stripes so far. It's a really great group so far, and you're the leader of them, a 3-time champion. And I that was pretty much the end of the questions I kind of had queued up for you, but I kind of thought of one here while I was sitting here listening to you, just enjoying listening to you talk about the seasons and how you look at racing. You look at the stats. I said you had 23 wins. You got 3 championships. You've been, the top tier of this league for 6 seasons now. And if you look at also the rest of the stats, you see one other driver that's kind of been the driver that's kept up with you and been the one that's been on that same pace of wins, and that's Scott Rickard. 21 wins for himself. So y'all are right neck and neck for when it comes to the all-time win record here at Stars and Stripes. If you had one word to describe Scott as like a competitor or as a racer, how would you do it? Because I think Scott is a very interesting driver.
Yeah, we've actually gotten a chance to race a lot together recently. We usually get together sometimes on Monday nights and race the new schedule that comes out for officials. And let's see, I try to think of the right way to put it because he's a really great guy to talk to, and he's clearly very nice and forgiving. But then when you get him on the track, I mean, you'll see a lot of times where we're inches apart, and we have a ton of fun racing each other because we know that the other one's going to take care of each other. We've had some fun finishes that way. But I think I don't want to say surprising, but just kind of the speed isn't unexpected, but the vigor in which he attacks is definitely unexpected in my opinion versus when you talk to him. So I'd say a little bit just he kind of hides in the weeds and then pops out when you least expect it. So he's fun to race with. I missed the season when he won his championship, the Truck Series, but he missed the season when I won the ARCA Series championship. So I think that kind of evens us out. And we just, ever since then, I've had some really good races. I think starting with the trucks in Chicago that one year was, oh man, I don't know if you guys even got the pleasure of broadcasting that one, but that was a heck of a finish. And he's a fun guy to race with, and everybody in here is. And the fact that I've won 3 out of 6, I guess, once this season's over, doesn't do justice to the talent that's in this league, right? Like I've got lucky and had a couple good runs to the finish, but there's so much talent that we should be really more distributed than we are because everybody in here is just fantastic. So fun guys to race with. Scott, especially always a threat, and I've had a lot of fun racing officials with him here in the last couple of years because we've gotten to know, a little bit of race strategy. He's a little bit more of a hard charger, and I'm a little bit on the slower side. So I think we've both kind of gained some tactics from the other in that regard. So yeah, that's been fun.
I love to hear that, man. I tell you, Scott is such a nice guy. Just always an interesting interview. So short, just right to the point. Tells you exactly how he felt about the race coming in, and I love that guy. He's a great racer. And like you said, with his personality, you would not think that driver is that aggressive and that willing to put it on the line. Sometimes with a personality like being that nice, you kind of don't get walked over, but you kind of get used up by a few people that are willing to, push you around a little bit. And I think he has the greatest, he has tons of speed, first of all, but the pushback is just perfect enough. It's not over the edge, and it's just enough to make it where it's great racing. And I think you two have just always had some great battles, in my opinion, watching you two.
Yeah. I think you nailed it exactly. And I think his racing style makes up for what you would expect to do. Like you said, he does not allow himself to get walked over. And if you even think you're going to do that, you'll get turned before you know it. So there are some times where I look up and I'm like, oh man, that was a little close to the left rear, wasn't it? He's like, but we're always clean. And if something does happen, I mean, we both know that that's part of racing, right? So yeah, it's fun to get guys like that you can race clean with, race hard with, and always have a good time with. So.
No doubt, man. I tell you, it's always fun to watch Stars and Stripes on a Thursday night. So you folks out there tuning into this podcast, make sure you go and check them out every Thursday night at 9:20 Eastern on Freaky Fast Broadcasting. You get to see a guy like this, a 3-time champion, a 23-time winner, go out there and compete against the likes of Scott Rickard. You know, we got Ross Tatum here coming in this past season. I mean, you got so many great drivers right in the addition. I mean, and up to the point of Las Vegas, we had a different pole winner in every single race. So it just shows you the stature of the league, the speed that drivers show, and you've even had some new ones come in. You know, Juan Jimenez, he came in, he's shown some speed in his first 2 races. I'm just really excited to see how it all shakes out with season 6 and closes out, because I think, you know, whoever wins the championship is really going to deserve it this season, first off. And then also, then we go into season 7. Hopefully we'll get you back full time, and man, we'll get to see a battle for the ages, as they would say.
Yes, yeah, I agree. There's too many good guys. Not enough of them get to win often enough. I mean, there's so many good racers in here and that find themselves up front, and most of the time it's just one move here or there at the end of the race that decides these things, right? So yeah, I'm excited to see how the season shakes out too, and hopefully we'll give them a run for money next season.
Definitely, man. Definitely. I tell you what, it's been a great conversation with you, Kyle. Before we close this out, is there anybody you want to send a shout out to at the league, or anybody out there tuning into the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of went over them over the race, or over the course of the conversation. I mean, shout out to Nate, obviously, for putting on the league that he does. It's a ton of fun. You can see, I mean, with as many drivers as we've brought in over the years and had, I mean, just such good racing. Shout out to Derek, obviously. Wouldn't be driving with the OG G27 without him. So huge shout out to him. He's contributed there to at least the last couple wins. So yeah, shout out to, like you said, Scott. Really fun. Have a ton of fun racing with him. We'll see if he gets that his second championship. He kind of looks like the guy to beat right now, in my opinion. But there's plenty of other guys out there to kind of give him a run. So yeah, shout out to those guys in terms of the league, and I'm excited to continue racing with them this year.
I'm excited to be calling it from the booth, man. You guys always put on a show. So, like I said, Thursday nights at 9:20 Eastern, folks, on Freaky Fast Broadcasting. You'll get to hear myself, Sam Dyer, have Robert Moyer Jr. running the production, and you get to see guys like Kyle McCoy here out on track. And thank you for tuning in to the second episode of the Cool Down Lap here. It's been a pleasure to talk to Kyle this week, or tonight here, and then we'll have another conversation for episode 3 with another one of the drivers here at Stars and Stripes. So thank you, Kyle, and everybody out there for tuning in. It's been a pleasure.
Well, the 3-time champ certainly had a lot of great conversations. They can keep on going on forever. And here's another conversation that could have gone for hours. We had to rein him in and hold it back. It's going to be our very own Robert Moyer Jr., the owner of Freaky Fast Broadcasting and the producer for every race, getting to talk to Steven Stempien of how that of the WSSR Roasted Gems Cup Series has been going on for Season 6.
Joining me today here is Steven Stempien. So how you doing, Steven?
Doing very well, Robert. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Not a problem. It's great. It's great to have you on here. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions first, and I asked you how you're doing and everything, and basically here I'm going to ask you is what got you into iRacing or racing in general? What was the thing that got you to get involved into this kind of stuff?
Well, I guess going back to being a huge NASCAR fan in the early 2000s, and then during the whole era where Sierra and Poppy Ross came out with the NASCAR racing games for the PC, and I was lucky enough to have my dad bring me to pretty sure it was Comp USA and grab a copy of N4, so NASCAR Racing 4. And I was racing on a keyboard for a little while before I eventually was lucky enough to get a wheel. I was probably 14 at the time, I want to say. And yeah, so NASCAR 4, And then finally got into the NASCAR. I picked up the next year copy, which was NASCAR Racing 2002. Ended up finally getting off the keyboard that year. I convinced my dad and mom to give me a wheel because during summer, that's basically all I was doing out of high school in the summertime was jumping on that and racing online and stuff. And I think the first wheel that I ended up getting was a want to say it was a Logitech, but I don't want to say it's a Logitech at the same time. It was a red and black wheel. It was pretty cool. It just came with pedals, wheel, no shifter.
Microsoft Sidewinder.
Maybe Microsoft Sidewinder. It was red and black, and it was nice. It was nice. It did the job. And I raced with a bunch of good group of guys, that was nice enough to take me in at 14 years old, kind of like what we do on iRacing nowadays with all the young guns. Yeah, NASCAR Racing 2002, and then eventually to the last one that they had was NASCAR Racing 2003, and played that for years. And it just that's what really got me hooked into doing the whole simulation thing. We'd run every night basically in the summertime, and obviously I'd be playing baseball for sports and stuff during the summertime, but as soon as I got home, I was on the sim racing. You couldn't beat that. It was so much fun. I'd be up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Me and my little brother would be watching me, and he'd eventually, jump on for a little bit back then. But that's what really got me started into the whole sim racing thing. And then, did a little painting and stuff. Got familiar with Photoshop during all that. So I just thought all that was cool. All those big websites that was out there.
Yeah.
nnracing.com and all that stuff for painting, and being able to drive Dale Jr.'s paint scheme as your own, kind of, I guess, was pretty cool on the sim. Obviously being a big Dale Jr. fan, so it was many good times, many late nights for a 13, 14-year-old Steve Stempien. But man, I tell you, I wish I could go back and do it all over again. Because that was a great time.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, it's back when I was starting to, basically racing and then, or back in them days. But yeah, so all right. Well, hey man, my next question to you is going to be here is how did you find league racing? What got you into league racing? Was it just something that you stumbled by, or what was it?
So I kind of, when did I think I got back into iRacing. Well, into iRacing. I knew what iRacing was. I didn't know the extreme of it. I took probably, we're going from maybe the last time I picked up a simulation game on a computer was 2005, 2006 when I moved out of my mom's. And I picked it back up. I want to say, 2017. 2018, I kind of downloaded the trial. I just signed up, paid for a trial, because I had a wheel that I had from like the Xbox system controller, which is no comparison. But so I jumped on, and I didn't jump online right away. I was kind of like going to test sessions to see what it was all about, and I was like, wow, this is pretty similar to the old games back in the day, how realistic those games were back then. And going into the league stuff, I want to say it wasn't until COVID when I started learning about the league stuff, and I had some time off of work. I was off of work for, I want to say, a month during the month of March. And I really turned the room that you're looking at now into a racing room. And I had a Thrustmaster at the time because, like I said, I was playing with Xbox, messing around with that. And I stumbled upon Sim Racing Unleashed, actually. I was just looking at hostess sessions. I was going into hostess sessions, trying to get some practice, learn about things. And I jumped into a hostess session by them, recruitment race. And they were at Auto Club, and then from then on, it was history after that. But that's how I stumbled upon iRacing. Of course, doing a little research as far as setting up the sim and all that stuff. But
it sounds interesting. It sounds like, and you ventured around too. So my next thing is my next question to you is going to be is that when you see yourself on Freaky Fast Broadcasting and in a couple of years of you racing in different leagues and everything, how did those leagues help you become a better driver or develop into a better driver? Because each league that you race in is a different car, things like that, and different rules and different things that you deal with. I know we had same physics in iRacing, I know that, but when you're going from a cup car to a Xfinity car to even the trucks, what difference does that make you running in different leagues?
I guess the cup is the cup, right? That's your bread and butter. That's technically my favorite. I love racing the cup cars.
Okay.
But I guess when I first kind of got into the whole league stuff with Sim Race Unleashed, they kind of branched off to Xfinity and the trucks. So
Right.
I kind of got to run Xfinity on a Wednesday night, trucks on a Friday, and then Cup on Sunday. So it was pretty cool. You got your mix of cars in, and then obviously trying to get your A license so you can run Cup all the time. You start with the ACR cars back then,
Right.
and then worked your way up, which I thought was pretty cool because I don't think anybody should be tied down to one car. I think you learn something from each car, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, and it's just overall good experience to go into. A cup car, what you learn from Xfinity or what you learn from trucks. Even though they're kind of different, you still Xfinity or the trucks a little bit slippery, sliding around, helps you save a car, right?
Right.
On the cup side, you're
Right.
racing these competitive leagues on the cup side, which is most of the things I run competitive wise. Is cup, and you just gotta stay on your toes and counter steering and doing all that stuff, trying to save a car from spinning out off the corner because you're pushing too hard. But that was some stuff that I took over from the Xfinity and trucks, and obviously the try to implement into the cup.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, it sounds interesting, and you do learn a lot, like you said there. In between them and the do's and the don'ts. We all know what that's like. So speaking of that, you said that your favorite car is the next gen car or cup cars or whatever generation that NASCAR brings out, iRacing brings out. Well, we're heading here now currently right now with WSSR season 6. With that starting and a couple races that you ran so far here, how do you feel your season's going, and where do you see yourself finishing at the end of the season with the schedule that we have coming up here? Tough question.
Tough question. It's been good. It hasn't been what I expected. I think I just hold myself to a higher standard running these cars as much as I have, and not having the finishes where I wanted to so far this season. Really, since I've started with WSSR, just haven't really had that luck. I think I used my luck all last year in a different league, and now it's coming back to bite me. Lady Luck is avoiding me like the plague. But the season's been great. I mean, it's one thing I like about racing in WSSR, especially with the caliber of guys I race with, right? Including all my guys from Category 5, and they elevate you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're competing against one another, but you're also making each other better at the same time. And you just, each one of us is raising the bar. So, I think Vincent's got the bar the highest right now out of anybody in the group, and you're just always trying to get to that bar. You're reaching for it, trying to surpass him or get up to his caliber, and I just enjoy that. I haven't had the finishes I've liked. I think I am a solid 3 races in, and I finally got my first top 10 yesterday. I mean, granted, obviously Daytona, first race of the season, that's a given. So we've had 2 real races, and I've been competitive in all of them, I guess. Led the most laps at Texas, and had some misfortune with a caution coming out, but overall, I think I'm sitting 9th in points, and that one top 10's bugging me, Robert. That's you know me. You've known me well enough for the last couple of years that you've been around me. I'm not a one top 10 type of guy. It's but that just shows you the guys that you race around, and you can't make any mistakes ever, right? Especially with a group of guys that you race with over at World Series of Sim Racing. They're all just a notch cut above the rest, of some of the leagues I ran in, but
Right.
I've enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it so far. And speaking of that league, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Is I've only ran, I think I've only had 19 starts with them.
Yes.
And I've had 6 top 5s and 9 top 10s. So half for top 10s, I guess. I don't know, but room for improvement for sure.
Most definitely. Yeah, with coming up here, we've got twin rings coming up, like I talked to you about, in the schedule coming up. They got a road course at Twin Ring coming up, I do believe. Some short tracks, they got IRP coming up, they got USA Speedway. Out of those 3 tracks, which one are you more looking forward to running in, and one that you're not least looking to, race in? Or race on.
So we have Motegi, and then we have Nashville, right?
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah, somewhere down there.
And then Lucas, a couple other ones.
Oh, yeah, those 2.
I think my least is going to be my least, and at the same time looking forward to, because I've never been on it, is Motegi.
Okay. The road, you talk about the road, right?
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the one we're doing this on Saturday.
Yes.
Pretty sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
It is going to be interesting. I've never been on that track. I'm not a road course racer. I've made myself a better road course racer, but I'm not. I'm not going to go out there and beat anybody. I still have not got a win at a road course, so. In my career, it's never happened. Eventually, it will.
Never know, never.
Yeah, exactly, and it can never say never.
You got it.
But I am looking forward to that, because I've never been on it, so I'm looking forward to getting some practice in this week and trying it out. And then the track I'm looking forward to the most would be Nashville. I've had a lot of success at Nashville, believe it or not.
Okay.
And I got a couple of wins. Each time I've been there, I've won a race. That's 2 times. I've won a race 2 times. So I'm looking forward to it. I didn't get to race with these guys a couple of seasons ago when they raced here, but I'm looking forward to it. It's circled.
So are you saying something when they go back and watch this podcast? Are you saying something to these guys here at WSSR?
I'm just saying, watch out for Nashville. Watch out for the number 81 in Nashville. I've led a lot of laps in Nashville in many different leagues, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, now I'm looking forward to it. I have to see one, so see how that all plays out. But yeah, I mean, other than that, we basically covered what I have to talk about. And overall, is there anything you want to add, Stempien, to these guys out here at WSSR, or just a little bit more information about your sim career? What is your goals in sim career and things like that? Because I know you got a supportive family, you got your supportive wife, you got a great kid, your dad supports you. Race in and race out on YouTube. That's got to be a really great feeling to have family members like that, support you in a sim game, and that, to me, that's cool.
Yeah. I love I love the fact, my dad lives probably about 45 minutes away. So I don't get to see him that often. Obviously I'm working all the time and with the kid and everything, but I am glad that I can at least jump on here and give him something to watch up in his apartment every whatever night I race in that's broadcasted, and he has a ball, he has a blast, he loves it. And at the same time, I'm very fortunate that I've got a lovely wife that has been able to let me do this for the last couple of years, even with the birth of our son back in July of 21. So it's she supported me through a whole season at another league last year every Sunday night for 35 weeks, along with racing, practicing, putting the hours in, trying to get ready for that week's race. And I'm very fortunate that she lets me do what I love to do. It's one thing that love being about in this chair is it's me time for a couple hours. I get to relax, and then I go back, go to work, support the family, do all that good stuff, and just very fortunate on that end. But as far as your other question was, other stuff goals wise for iRacing, and I'm looking forward to, I guess, down the road. Obviously, the rest of the season at WSSR, I think it's going to be a fantastic one. We got a lot of good races left on the schedule up until I think the June 3rd is the last race. So looking forward to the rest of the season. We're only 3 weeks in. Excuse me. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be. I think everybody's in for a show for the rest of the year, just because of the guys that we have in that league. And huge shout out to obviously all the guys over there at the admin crew and all that good stuff. And then I guess just my goal is to win a championship in one of these leagues one day. Won a lot of races since I've been on the sim the last couple of years. I've been able to compete for a championship, just never been able to seal the deal. I feel like I'm the Matt Ryan of iRacing. Getting so close and never just accomplishing getting the championship. But hopefully, I can get that monkey off my back eventually, and hopefully you'll be able to see that one day. You were able to see my first league win way back on Father's Day. That was a very special one for me with SIU, and just looking forward to WSSR. It's a fun league, with all the buddies of mine and all those guys that support me, and various other leagues that watch all my other league races. I watch theirs, and we all support each other over there. Got a lot of good stuff coming up this year. I'm looking forward to it. I got another league starting in 2 weeks, so looking forward to that. And I just don't race either, Robin. I'm surprised you didn't ask me that. I paint a lot of cars, as you saw last night. We didn't even get a chance to discuss that. I don't know how much time we got. Are we being cut here?
Well, we're in a little bit here, but hey, you're more than welcome to talk about, your painting skills and what you do in painting, because I know you're a Dale Jr.'s fan, a Dale Earnhardt fan. You drive the 81 Chevy. You got in and out paint schemes from this from eras of Dale Jr. and Senior in that family of era of racing. But I know you love painting stuff, and you're more than welcome to let guys know about your painting career too, man. We got some time yet.
We got about 4 minutes. We got about 4 minutes. All right. Well, obviously I love painting. If anybody watching out there has watched this past week, obviously at North Wilkesboro. Jesus, forgot where we were. It's only been 24 hours. I had a couple of schemes out there, including myself. Cedric's and Colley's, obviously throwback to Mark Martin and Steve Park. But yeah, no, I love painting ever since I was that 13, 14-year-old age. And some days I wish I had my old computer because I had so many logos from various websites back in that day. Because that was such a huge community.
Yes.
Of painters. I mean, everything was online. You could find any logo you wanted. Anybody who had help with anything, it was crazy. I would give anything to have that computer back and recover some of that.
Yeah.
But I am obviously a huge Dale Jr. fan. Not so much. I don't run Dale Senior schemes. I try not to. It's just a respect thing for me. I don't really like running his schemes. He's just on another level. But Dale Jr. schemes, obviously loved all of them. Loved recreating them. And obviously I do race the 81. So the 81 is what he ran back in the day with Chance 2 and JR Motorsports when he was starting up. So with Martin Truex, which is pretty cool. And always thought that was cool because people would go to the 8, right? And I wanted to be a little bit different, so I actually got to run my number. Because you remember in NASCAR racing, if you had the number 8 and somebody got into the session before you were getting some 3-8-4 number or something like that. It was crazy, and it was going to be a gray scheme or a purple scheme. I didn't want none of that, so I definitely changed it up so I could run my number.
Yeah, I remember those days, man. Back in the day, man. Making me feel old here, but ladies and gentlemen. So, with that being said, here I'd like to say thank you again, Steven Stempien, joining us here for the second episode here of the Cool Down Lap here at Freaky Fast Broadcasting. Driver of the 81 again, ladies and gentlemen, at WSSR. Make sure you tune in every Saturday night at 7:50. Excuse me, when they go live. Here on Freaky Fast Broadcasting, and you get to see this driver out there in 81 and root him on in the chat. And last but not least, Stempien, I will say this, and we're going to end this here tonight, is you got a championship coming. It's right around the corner. I got good feelings. Just keep plugging at it, and it will be there. But again, thank you for joining us here in the Cool Down Lap, bud.
Hey, Rob, I appreciate it, and of course, love everything that you guys do, and huge supporter of you guys over here at Freaky Fast. So I'm glad I could be a part of this session with you guys.
Thank you so much to everyone that has gone all the way through listening through those 4 great conversations. Again, we will be having a separate video for the Full Send Racing series with Trevor Earhart and that of Travis Dart, as they got to talk about how season 4 of the Full Send Racing series has been going, and as well for that of Travis Dart, how it's been being an owner over there. But for us here at Freaky Fast Broadcasting, if you'd like to introduce this series to anyone else, hey, if sometimes people like to just listen to the audio, some like visual. That's why we have the YouTube version, but we also have the Spotify and podcast versions that you can listen to. Go look up Freaky Fast Broadcasting and you can find episode 1 and episode 2 of the Cool Down Lap. Thank you so much for everyone that's been listening to this point. We'll see you on the next Cool Down Lap.